The climate lockdowns are in full swing in the eastern bloc of Canada, with Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick all ready to punish people for going on nature walks and forest hikes. Canada's elbows up economic policy continues to ruin our country, with youth unemployment at an all-time high and increased tariffs from Donald Trump abounding. Still, more information proved what we've known since 2020. That the COVID experimental gene therapy injections are effective only at ruining your immune system and killing you worse than the actual disease. We're just a few weeks away from the start of the 2025-2026 school year, and I have a question for you. In light of what we're covering today, and in light of the kind of culture that creates it, do you still actually have your children enrolled at state-funded Marxist indoctrination centers, or public schools for short? You know that this corrupt system is precisely why Canada is in the mess that it is. What on earth are you waiting for? It's August 15th. I'm Andrew DeBartolo. That's Matt Hallick. This is Liberty Dispatch.
Hey, and welcome back to Liberty Dispatch, where we bring you Canadian news and analysis from an unapologetically conservative, Christian, emphasis on Christian, perspective. So if you like what we do, be sure to do what you can do to help our content get out to more people. And that is primarily by subscribing to our various things. So wherever you're getting us from, be sure to like, subscribe, rate, review, comment on the video. Let us know what you think of the insanity of climate lockdowns because of so-called forest fires, but apparently not really, because it's just because they don't want to divert emergency resources to somebody that's not. Anyways, it's crazy, but let us know what you think down in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. Also, go over to ldcanada.substack.com. Be sure to subscribe over there, and you can get all our content, including long-form interviews with all our wonderful guests. We have many good guests on the show, and we definitely have a good lineup coming up as well. So definitely want to get over to ldcanada.substack.com. And in the future, I think we'll give you some bonus stuff for doing just that. But Andrew and I still have to talk about it. But I have a great idea for encouraging you to that end. But you should be encouraged just based on the content that we have over there to help support us, and obviously to help us keep doing what we're doing, which is shining the light of Christ into the darkness of the political chaos in our nation, Andrew. And it's been another chaotic week, and man, it seems like when I'm watching these videos, which we will see later on the show, it's giving me PTSD. You know, I feel like, oh man, we're going all the way back to 2020, and again, Andrew, they prove our conspiracy theories right, that their twisted logic demands that because of the existential threat of climate change, that they would approach it in the same way that they have approached COVID. So not a surprise, but how are you doing?
Nope. I'm doing well. I was reminded of an article that was released in 2021, I think, early 2021, where this was the first time a legacy media outlet was bold enough to say, hey, we've noticed that our carbon footprint has been significantly reduced during the lockdowns. Maybe we need to toy with the idea of lockdowns in order to save the planet. And also in that same article, they talked about the 5 elemental rings coming together, and by those powers combined, they would be able to release Captain Planet to save Gaia, who is suffering because of all of the toxic waste that's being dumped into the oceans.
And that's why you should subscribe to our channel for cheeky comments like that.
So both of those circumstances, the having to lock down to save our planet from fires, and Captain Planet are both pieces of fiction. So we officially live in a cartoon, and this is our situation. And we're talking about situations, let's talk about your situation, friend. Let's talk about your investments. Let's talk about your planning, your wealth management for the future. I don't know who handles your investments. I don't know what kind of advisor you have. I don't know whether or not they're a believer, if they share your worldview. If they don't, maybe you are frustrated that they claim to be values based, yet they still invest your money in products offered by globalist firms like BlackRock. Well, at Rocklinc Investment Partners, they practice what they preach. Their team invests exclusively in high quality businesses with proven track records and growth, even in volatile markets. Each investment is thoroughly researched, adhering to their time tested principles without compromise. Contact Rocklinc today at 905-631-5462 or email them info@rocklink.com to learn more. Last week in our show, we mentioned that Nova Scotia was the first province to ban its citizens from going for walks in the forest under the threat of insane punishment, all to save them from blazing forest fires, burning the entire province down, or at least that's what the state would have you believe is actually going on. Okay? Well, it turns out the rest of the East Coast is following suit, with both New Brunswick and Newfoundland dipping into climate tyranny as well. Here's a video of the madness, as well as the consequences of one man who decided to, get this, go for a walk, which is his right to do. And this, of course, is brought to you from the I can't remember whether it's a Canadian Provident Corporation or Globalist News, but some statist rag brings you. I think it's CBC, because
CBC.
the guy who's presenting it almost certainly has he, him pronouns listed in his social media profile, and probably dyes his hair pink in the month of June.
I'm sure it's mandated at this point that they have their pronouns in their bio.
Yeah.
I'm sure of it.
Crown lands are off limits in New Brunswick.
Get out of the woods.
Yeah, there's a good
Stay
list
out of the
there.
woods.
The province's premier announcing the restrictions this
Get out of the
weekend
woods.
to
Stay out
prevent
of the
more
woods.
wildfires like this growing
This is
one
what
near
effeminate
Farmachine.
tyranny looks
We are
like.
really hoping
We
that at the end of all this,
really-
we will have issued 0 fines.
This just days after Nova Scotia
premier
issued a
issued
similar
a
ban.
fabulous
No
press
hiking,
conference.
camping, fishing,
That's what it
or
sounds like.
ATV use in the forest.
I'm losing sleep about
Oh, yes, we wouldn't want that,
The
Tim.
premier says the strict measures are a small price to pay to avoid devastating wildfires.
We must do
Hi.
everything possible to
Can't
protect
hear it.
each other.
Those who don't comply face a $25,000 fine.
So I'm going to walk down here and go into these woods.
In a video posted on social media, Nova Scotia resident Jeff Evely filmed himself deliberately stepping into the woods. He's one of more than a dozen people already fined in Nova Scotia.
I have a ticket here. $28,870.50.
Some say officials have gone too far.
Government
Deliberately
isn't my
stepping
dad.
in the
This
woods.
overreach in the name of keeping us safe and protected needs to stop.
I can't even take my puppy up the road and go for a walk down the trail. That's to me, that's extreme.
But fire officials argue it's necessary. With extreme fire conditions,
experts. Here come
Nova
the
Scotia
experts.
has
Yep.
banned activities on Crown lands twice.
We've
in the
heard
past
this all
decade.
before.
The vast majority of fires in Nova Scotia are human caused. We should be able to prevent virtually all of our fires here in Nova Scotia.
If a fire gets going, it's going to be a catastrophe.
A catastrophe officials hope steep penalties will help avoid. With conditions this dry, large parts of Atlantic Canada are bracing for what could come next. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Saskatoon.
And
There you go.
What could come next is more tyranny. Tyranny, it's fabulous. Anyways, let's get into some of the specifics here, just so we know the numbers and what we're dealing with. Okay, this is as reported by Juno News. Quote: at a Saturday press conference, Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey said the penalties, which include minimum fines of $50,000, apply to anyone who ignores evacuation orders enters restricted zones or otherwise obstructs firefighting efforts. He said, effective today, new fines will range from $50,000 to $150,000 for a first offense. When a ticket is issued, fines will increase from $75 to $50,000, and imprisonment in default of payment will increase from 3 days up to 6 months, he said. The province has also launched a $5,000 snitch on your neighbor reward, Crime Stoppers reward, for tips leading to the arrest of anyone suspected of deliberately starting a fire. These fines are not theoretical, Fury said. If you violate these orders, you will be prosecuted. Now, check this out. I don't know if anyone noticed this, but it's just, they're going to, so, wow, you're going to get $5,000. Great. After they steal $50,000 from someone for going on a walk in the park. It's bananas. But I remember a time when people parasailing in the middle of nowhere with no one around them were arrested by Coast Guard officers and fined. I remember being in Canada where a dad and his two sons rollerblading on an empty pathway in Burlington received an $801 ticket. I remember all this, or before they shut down churches, before they started arresting pastors. I remember the craziness of, oh, you want to take your kids to the park? Sorry, we've put a chain link fence around it for your safety, of course.
Yes, it's always for your safety. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, the price that people can pay in fines is so much less than the precedent that all this sets. And this is the exact same thing we said during COVID, that lockdowns, that assuming people are sick, just that every single person's sick, the quarantine, the way that they went about it, all of this set a precedent that will be used again by government. And it didn't take long. It didn't take long to go this far for governments. And this is a power play, a control that apparently they're doing for our own good and our own well-being. Where have we heard that before? And this is, as the JCCF, the lady there said, this is paternalism, government paternalism.
I don't think she was
insane
JCCF.
degree.
I think it was Canadian Constitutional Foundation.
Yes, that's right. You're right. It's that one. But regardless, the point still stands that that going for a walk in the woods is a constitutionally protected exercise. And governments are now fining people for doing something that is theirs by right. And because COVID set the precedent that governments can overreach and overstep their authorities and become laws unto themselves for COVID lockdowns, well, why not even more for the greatest existential threat that we're facing in our present moment, which is climate change and its wide array of effects?
In 2023, I believe, or 2024, when Health Canada or I think it was Health Canada put out their propaganda magazine or something, there was something in a little bit of an introduction or prologue written by Theresa Tam, and she said that the climate crisis is the greatest health threat that Canadians have ever faced. Those were her words in an official government document, that the climate crisis, climate change is the greatest health threat we've ever faced. This, by the way, was like 6 months after all the COVID lockdowns had ended, when that was the worst. Now climate change, that's the new worst for us.
Exactly. So that's the thing that I think is not being well covered by mainstream media, especially liberal, journos. I can't remember the guy's name, but he went on an unhinged rant. I'm sure most of our listeners have seen it. He's a contributor to CBC and CTV regularly. He's a political pundit who lives in the swamp in Ottawa. And he went off and how the MAGA, the far right, the convoy conservatives, they're just unmitigated selfish in the way that they're going about things. And it's not about their rights, but it's about the safety and the well-being of the community and the society. And I'm putting it in a very less spicy way, but he was totally unhinged in going for this. But it's, again, the precedent that is set in these circumstances is the point. And that's why we have to fight on these hills. We can't keep pushing the fight down further, because we've seen it. Once the government takes rights in just a small little way, they'll keep pushing and pushing and pushing and make this more of a common occurrence. And that's why it matters. That's why defying unlawful, ungodly orders like this is good, and it's right, and it's just. And the idea that we're fining people 20, 30, 50,000, throwing them in jail for taking a walk in the woods, it's beyond disgraceful. And I mean, our magistrates in Canada have completely and utterly lost the plot. Nevertheless, so next we have New Brunswick, and this is from the Canadian Pravda Corporation themselves, the CBC. The New Brunswick government is asking everyone in the province to stay out of the woods. As of 12:01 a.m. this past Sunday, all Crown land is closed. That means no fishing, camping, or hiking, no vehicles in the woods. Trail systems are closed, and camping is only allowed in campgrounds. There's also a ban on all forestry operations such as harvesting, forwarding, skidding, stratification, and chipping. And come out of the woods, stay out of the woods until it's safe for everyone. Premier totalitarian Susan Holt said in a Saturday afternoon news conference. Unlike Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, New Brunswick has not imposed increased fines for people who violate the restrictions. Holt said she hopes that the step won't be necessary. We know New Brunswickers want to protect our woods and forests, she said. Should that change, then we will revisit questions of fines. So, Andrew, the JCCF put out a brief video responding to the madness of forest fire lockdowns, and here it is. Indeed, it doesn't. Does it, though? Does the Charter protect our liberty? I mean, in theory, it should. Andrew, doesn't this smack of like the teacher who makes the whole class stay late because they couldn't figure out who spit the spitball in the front of the class? You know, you punish everyone.
This is the teacher who punishes the whole class, and no one has done anything wrong.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. Regardless, it's unjust. Yeah. It's unjust, right? And it's interesting too, because the Miss Holt here, she kind of let the mask slip in what she was saying in regards to the reason they were doing the lockdowns. Well, so it's not necessarily, we think, going for a hike necessarily leads to the forest fires, although it's good to hear the firefighters acknowledge that most of this is not caused by random climate change incidents or whatever, but human caused an arson.
I think they had to go through a climate change re-education class after that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it at all. But what she said is, well, it's for your own good because all of our resources, our first responders, are taken up in responding to the fires across the Atlantic Canada. Therefore, if you go out in the woods and you hurt yourself, we're not going to be able to respond to it.
We don't want to overwhelm the medical system. So I mean, the worst thing would be for you. The worst thing, because everyone's going to be in the hospital dying with COVID, the worst thing would be if you broke your leg and needed help. So we don't want to overwhelm anything. So let's just 2 weeks to flatten the fire, and everything will be fine.
Yes. So again, what we see is the exact same playbook, the exact same rationale, as you've mentioned, that was used in COVID. And this is why you can't, on principle, stay silent and shut up about the obvious, blatant overstepping of the law by civil magistrates. It is principally an important thing. Regardless if you're a big hiker or what have you, you cannot stand by and let the government abuse their powers in this way. And that's the very thing we should have learned from COVID. But it seems like our magistrates learned how to use the playbook, and we still, as Canadians, are too docile to respond appropriately. But anyways, along with that video, the JCCF released a statement on their website, and here's a portion of it. The JCCF announces that a legal warning letter has been sent to Premier of New Brunswick, Susan Holt, and Minister of Natural Resources and Energy Development, John Huron, urging them to reverse their province-wide ban on public access to Crown land. The universal ban on access to nature across the province applies to low-risk activities such as hiking, cycling, fishing, or even walking a dog in order to prevent forest fires, according to the Premier and Minister. Constitutional lawyer Alison Pajovic states that these sweeping restrictions violate Canadians' right to liberty protected by Section 7 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The letter urges the province to immediately remove the ban on harmless recreational activities on Crown land.
If the state were really smart, you know what they would do? They would contact whoever they need to get the rights to Smokey the Bear. Like they should have in the same way that Theresa Tam had that just gross, creepy conversation with Mrs. Claus and Santa Claus about why everyone needs to get the jab. They should set up so Susan Holt should be having a conversation with Smokey the Bear, and I'm really worried about what's happening in New Brunswick. What are you?
Yeah.
Well, Smokey, you see, and then only you can prevent forest fires. Like they're missing an opportunity here to really, really drive this thing home.
Oh man. But just the level of insanity that we're dealing with in Canada, that in the midst of a crime wave across this country, that's seeing, as we covered on our recent program, that's seeing heinous, violent sexual crimes and murders go virtually unpunished in our nation. The type of law enforcement that we're getting is just regulatory, fines for doing activities that are lawful objectively and lawful according to our Constitution. And this
because
is
it's a test, right? So what the state is doing here, it's the same thing the state did early on in COVID. This is them testing the water.
Yes.
They're seeing how much can we encroach on the liberties of people? What can we take? And there's some people who will push back, but that $28,000 fine will make less people, not more people, do likewise. In the same way that once they started dishing out the serious fines, like the $800 fine during COVID, whatever, fine. But once they came out with those $6,000 Arrive Can fines, or once they came out with $1,000, $10,000 a pop, or every time you were held in contempt of court, it was $100,000. Like when they started coming out with these fines, that's when the dissent only existed among those who were principled in their dissent. So they're just testing how much can we take, how much can we push back, and they're going to crush some people with some of these fines and come at them hard to discourage any other disobedience, because tyrants hate when you disobey. They just hate when you don't do what they tell you what to do.
Yeah, and Andrew, what would you say? Okay, so here again, we're going to revisit. Maybe you have PTSD. Maybe I shouldn't ask this question, but I think it's important for our sake, the sake of the listeners. What would you say okay, Romans 13, though, Andrew? We're dealing with magistrates that are saying, hey, for the sake, it's not a bad thing, right? We're saying for a period of time, don't go hiking in the woods for the sake of forest fires, out of the love of neighbor. Why is that argument extremely flawed in this case, especially in the broader context of what I'm talking about in Canada, where we're seeing violent crime go unpunished, but we're seeing civil fines and penalties for doing something that is lawful according to our charter and good for you. And obviously the law of God doesn't condemn it. So why is Romans 13, why is that a bunk argument? Why was it a bunk argument for COVID? Why is it a bunk argument for climate lockdowns?
I mean, really quick, Romans 13 does not teach unlimited obedience to the civil magistrate. Romans 13 clearly teaches that the state has been given by God a limited and specific purpose and a very focused scope, right? So the state has been ordained by God to serve God as his servant, as his deacon, to punish those who break God's law, reward those who keep God's law, and ultimately provide a national defense to protect the borders of the nation. That's the role of the state. Romans 13, or the parallel passage in 1 Peter 3 or 1 Peter 2. So the state is limited in its activities. Anything beyond that, no one is required morally in the eyes of God to obey any of their mandates or diktats. They're beyond the scope of their authority. In the same way that a father and husband cannot demand a certain menu and tell his wife, unless you make me exactly what I want 7 days a week, you are disobeying God. A husband does not have the authority. That's outside of his scope of authority. That's not his job. The same way elders can't tell congregants, ladies, you must wear yellow dresses to church. That's outside of their scope, even though there are passages of scripture that say obey your leaders and submit to them. So whenever authority has been given by God to a person, the exercise of that authority is limited to the scope that God has ordained. And so the state's authority is limited to punishing those who break God's law, rewarding those who keep it, and providing national defense. That's Romans 13 and 1 Peter, again, I can't remember 2 or 3, make that clear. Therefore, it's not, the issue isn't just when the state commands what God forbids or forbids what God commands. That's not the issue. Clearly, that's a problem. But when the state steps outside of its God-ordained jurisdiction, anything it requires of you, you are not, in the eyes of God, you are not morally required. Now, if your conscience is so pricked by it because you are an immature believer who is weak in your conscience, you're the weaker younger brother, I would hope that eventually you would grow out of it with conversations and examining the Word of God. But if, for sake of argument, let's say you are that weaker, uninformed brother whose conscience and faith are still juvenile, in that case, for the sake of conscience, don't go against your conscience, because that's Romans 14. Romans 14 is, if it doesn't proceed from faith, it's sin. So you can't act against your conscience. I would hope you would, smarten up. but you are not required.
Yeah, it's literally going for a hike in the woods.
You're not required to obey the state when they command anything outside of their jurisdiction, anything. And the state has not been given authority over healthcare. They've not been given authority over education, over media, over environmental issues. This is outside of their jurisdiction. So when they tell you to do it, again, it's the same thing as a church elder telling you exactly what color of clothes to wear on Sunday morning, or the same thing as a dad telling his kids exactly how to comb their hair and how many brush strokes they must use when they brush their teeth each night. And unless they do exactly what he says, they're defying him.
Mm-hmm.
Any dad who does that, no kid is required to obey their father outside of his God-given jurisdiction, which does not equal what kind of deodorant he uses, right? So when they step outside of their authority, you're not required to obey them.
And the funny thing, Andrew, is there's an inverse relationship between the size and the scope of the sphere and the actual amount of authority and power over a person's life, right? Like you and I as dads, we have more authority to control the behavior of our children than the state even does, right? Inside our domain. Like because the great part about this is that inverse relationship actually diminishes coercion in society, because basically the state's been given the least amount of ability to restrict people's behaviors, but they've been given the most devastating and deadly use of force to restrict that limited set of behaviors. But if the state becomes paternalistic, like we're seeing, what we're going to see is, and what we have seen, is a drastic increase in coercion in the public sphere, which necessarily diminishes freedoms. And in this case, we're talking about the freedom to just in some cases, go for a hike in your backyard. Mm-hmm. Like that's what we're dealing with. That's seriously what we're dealing with here. And I mean, it seems surreal. It really does. Because it's so absurd, it's hard to imagine that we have gotten here. But it's been a slow boiling of the frog, and we've been trying to have these conversations over and over again. And we're trying to say,
we've been here not that long ago.
Yeah, and we're trying to say we'll continue to go here. This will increase in intensity if we don't push back.
I remember when there was one period of time where we were still living in Kingston, and there was a particular exit on the highway where, as cars were getting off the exit, police officers were waiting there to look inside the vehicle to make sure that they were all members of the same household. And so it was a Sunday, we were going to worship at an undisclosed location north of the city because it was extremely illegal. And so we were driving up, and it was my family, plus it was an older lady from church that we brought with us. So we got off the highway and we're driving up, and the police officers look in and they say we can go. They assume that, she was the family grandmother. And we drove up, whatever. So a couple young adults show up not that long after us and said, yeah, we got off that same exit. The cops look inside the vehicle. They saw that we don't all belong in the same household. They asked for my driver's license, and they said, you need to go home now. Get back on the highway, go back the way you came. And then he, because he's a godly young man, got back on the highway, took another exit, and then came a roundabout way to church because tyrants must be defied. Yeah. But I remember that I lived through that. I lived through highway exit checks to make sure everyone lived in the same household. So this is not that long ago.
Yeah, and that is why, defying tyrants is obedience to God, because the whole premise of Romans 13 is obeying godly magistrates who are supposed to be God's deacons, ruling according to his law order. It's not a made-up order by whoever tends to be in power that Christians have to obey. And that's a large part of the Romans 13 debate that has been glossed over. And that is a devastating thing to just wave your hand over, because that's at the core of what it means to be a deacon, a doulos. Do servants have to serve their masters? Yes. Well, if that's the case with the magistrate, do they have to serve Christ? Yes. Is punishing the good and rewarding the wicked, or overlooking the wicked, is that obeying Christ? Absolutely not. This is the sort of thinking that we have to be able to do as Christians. And this is why this story, as absurd as it might be, is so important for us to understand.
Yes, agree. Quick correction. The word in Romans 13 is not doulos, it's diakonos. But other than
diakonos, sorry.
I agree with what you said. That's okay. Just there's some Greek nerds out there who are triggered, and now we've cleared the record. So, as someone who watches and supports our show, you obviously know how important it is to take responsibility for the well-being of your own family. You hopefully don't send your children to state-funded Marxist education. You don't drink from the propaganda hose that is the legacy media. And after COVID, you certainly do not trust the medical experts and their political science. We want to help you to continue to take the health and wellness of your family seriously by telling you about Plexus. Plexus is a health and wellness company that offers amazing probiotics, all natural energy products, and multivitamins that aren't filled with garbage. If you're ready to become even less reliant on the state-funded medical industrial complex and strengthen your body and the bodies of your family members, email healthandliberty@proton.me to find the products that are best for you and your lifestyle. Don't put off responsibility for the health and wellness of your family any longer. Email healthandliberty@proton.me and get great Plexus products for you and your family today. Our economy, our elbows up economy, continues to suffer after 10 years of Trudeau, the lost decade.
What do you mean this didn't work, Andrew?
Yep. It
this didn't work?
No, Mike Myers didn't work. He went back to his mansion in the States. So we have the lost decade, and then we have the current rulership of Mark's commie. Trump's 35% tariff hike obviously makes matters worse. This is from the Post-Millennial. Quote, President Donald Trump signed an executive order increasing tariffs on Canada imports from 25% to 35%, citing what the White House called a worsening national emergency fueled by fentanyl and other illicit drugs flowing into the U.S. across the northern border. The new tariff rate, which took effect August 1st, 2025, comes in response to what the administration described as Canada's continued inaction on the production and trafficking of synthetic opioids and retaliatory measures against earlier U.S. trade actions. The White House said fentanyl seizures at the northern border this year have already exceeded the combined totals of the previous 3 years, with 2 months still left in the fiscal year. Quote, the escalating crisis demands decisive action, the administration said in a statement. They continue, Canada has failed to arrest traffickers, seize illicit drugs, or cooperate with U.S. law enforcement despite repeated warnings. According to the White House, Canada-based trafficking networks now operate so-called super labs in both rural and urban areas of Western Canada, some of which are capable of producing between 44 and 66 pounds of fentanyl each week. The drugs, officials say, are often linked to Mexican cartels who have expanded operations inside Canada's borders. Goods that qualify for tariff-free treatment under the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement will remain exempt from the new tariff rate. However, products transshipped to evade the 35% tariff will be hit with a separate 40% duty, close quote.
Ooh, man, that's not going so good.
No.
Those are bad numbers. Elbows up.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Didn't work. Not
Maybe
working.
do we need our own walls? Our own build that wall? I don't know. What we need is to get rid of everyone who's in elected office, all of them. That's what we really need.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be for that. Make sure they can't make a salary. That would go a long way to reforming Canada. If people couldn't get rich being useless politicians, if we just take the salary away from literally every single one of our parliamentarians, so they actually have to do something, worthwhile while serving as a representative, I think you'd get a lot less terrible people in office and a lot more patriots. Nevertheless, so one of the best metrics for the health and success of an economy is workforce participation rates, even amongst youth. And this is truly tragic, coming to us from Juno News, because Canada's youth employment rate is in an awful place. So Canada lost a crushing 51,000 full-time jobs last month. We have the central banker in. Things are going very bad. According to Statistics Canada, that's who recorded the 51,000 full-time jobs lost last month. Unbelievable. The data revealed a harrowing picture, especially when it comes to youth employment. Quote, overall, there has been little net employment growth since the beginning of the year, and the number of employed people in July was little change compared with January, reads the data released on Friday. Youth employment fell by 34,000 jobs last month, a 0.7% decline, bringing the rate to 53.6%. Whoa. Excluding the COVID-19 pandemic years of 2020 and 2021, July marked the lowest youth employment rate since November 1998. Quote, young Canadians are being crushed by Carney's failures to get our economy moving again. This was confirmed by July's labor force survey, which found that the youth employment rate has sunk to its lowest level in over 25 years, said Conservative Shadow Minister for Employment Garnet Genius. In a statement released Friday, meanwhile, the unemployment rate for youth returning to school rose to 17.5%. First jobs used to give youth experience that equipped them for their future, but this summer, students are facing an economic barrier. The private sector lost 39,000 employees last month, while public sector employees remained relatively unchanged. Anybody who knows anything about the public sector is not surprised. While unemployment continues to tick up, so does Canada's population, which increased by more than 37,000 last month. According to Statistics Canada, the population has shot up by 715,000 over the past 12 months, with 307,500 jobs added. The national unemployment rate now sits, and I should just throw in a caveat here, at a reported 6.9%.
Right. Yep.
The real unemployment rate is at least twice that, I guarantee you. The governments fudge with these numbers all the time, and they only really take in consideration people who are looking for work. Mm-hmm. So the amount of people out of work that are able-bodied adults who are capable of fulfilling jobs is way higher than 6.9%. And this number has the unemployment increasing across most provinces in Canada throughout July. Mm-hmm. And Andrew, just anecdotally, I think we've all seen this, right? When I go to my local Dairy Queen, even here in rural Manitoba, that was my first job. I worked from the age 15 all the way through high school. First job. Basically, every single person that I worked with, save one lady who had been there for 30 years, was like a 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid. Like, those jobs went to 15 and 16-year-old kids. Now, every single fast food outlet that I go to, it's filled with East Indian immigrants who are like at least in their 30s, right? So, and that's true of all the Tim Hortons, the McDonald's, everything, right? So all these jobs that were going to low-skilled youth that are a huge stepping stone for them learning responsibility, for them stepping into adulthood, and then also for them, providing for themselves as they're, going through university or what have you. These have just disappeared. They've gone totally to people, and in sometimes people who have been subsidized from our government to come and take these jobs that, naturalized Canadian citizens would have taken.
A lot of it is there's a lot of nepotism as well, and by that I mean you'll have people who, and it's a specific play that's made. It's a medium term play. You have people who will become store managers, right? People who've maybe been here, whether they were born here or been here for long enough. You work your way up. It's not very difficult to become an assistant manager at Tim Hortons or a store manager. But,
no. You just have to be somewhat responsible.
You'll have people who will, become a store manager, and then all they'll do is hire friends and family members.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, exactly. And that's something that is very clear, right? Like, we don't talk about that a lot, but that a lot of immigrant families who are hiring for jobs that they're either managing or businesses that they own, they don't place the same value on diversity as right. Canadians, right? They're far more disposed to that nepotism that you're talking about, and it's amazing in this whole economic situation that the immigration numbers are still where they are in Canada. Our government's totally out of control. And the guy who was able to use fear to get reelected, to get the Liberals reelected, has done absolutely nothing to change. He just I saw this the other day. He just celebrated his 100th day in office. And what has he done?
He hugged a sodomite whose bum was exposed in Vancouver.
Yeah, and he took a selfie with the dog masked individual. He cut
that
tolls,
terrible picture of
tolls on.
There's that picture of him making a terrible pass at an Edmonton Oilers game. It's like, man.
But I think it's in stark contrast, though, to a guy like Donald Trump, though, right? His first 100 days was such a flurry of activity, it spun your head around. Carney, by contrast, has virtually done nothing but go on holidays and fail to do the things that he said he was an expert at doing. I mean, Canada is in a bad way, and our economic situation is far worse than government statistics are going to actually tell you at the end of the day. So we're in a dire place.
Yeah, and while we're quickly talking about Tim Hortons and McDonald's, I mean, obviously you watch the show, you don't buy coffee from Tim Hortons and McDonald's, or you shouldn't. So where do I get my coffee from? Not Starbucks. They're demonic. You should get your coffee from, I don't know, a good Canadian values-based coffee company. Maybe that's where you should get your coffee from. I don't know. You tell me. Have a watch.
Now is not the time to surrender or retreat. Now is the time to build. It's not time to simply complain. It's time to get to work. It's time for people who share the values that built this nation to be open about them, to celebrate them, and to defend them. Our goal at Resistance Coffee has always been bigger than coffee. We want to fill the cup of every patriot in this land. We want to fuel a resistance of ordinary Canadians with extraordinary values. We want to encourage and inspire people who feel like they've lost their home to take it back. Now is the time to build. Fuel up and let's go.
Love it.
I've been in that truck, and I've had I've had that coffee in that house with those people.
And that's why you should support them.
Yeah, resistancecoffee.com. Buy your coffee there, and maybe you should check out to see if there are any outposts in your neighborhood, in your city. There's several outposts around the country where coffee is delivered to these hubs and then distributed to the people who live around the outpost. And if there isn't an outpost, maybe you should consider becoming an outpost. So again, head to resistancecoffee.com, buy your coffee, your merch, consider becoming an outpost. Lots of good stuff there.
So Andrew, as we were, considering the ramifications of the COVID lockdowns and the precedent that it's, setting the table for these climate lockdowns that we're seeing now. It would be a good idea if we ventured into a little COVID wrap up, a look at the ongoing saga, the fallout, if you will, from COVID-19 and the various things that went on during the scandemic. So just like we told you so, that these lockdowns were going to lead to further lockdowns for different reasons, namely climate change, let us get into a COVID we told you so news update. Why don't we? So this is from the Rebel News. Dr. John Catanzaro, a veteran in integrative oncology and CEO of Neo7 Bioscience, is exposing what he describes as unprecedented genetic disruptions tied directly to COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. Catanzaro's latest co-authored study compares transcriptomy data, essentially the body's genetic signaling blueprint, from healthy individuals pre-COVID and pre-vaccination to those who receive the mRNA shots. The findings are highly alarming. Thousands of genes dysregulated, sparking aggressive cancers, neurological collapse, vascular inflammation, and amyloid buildup. Those fibrous strands eerily observed in veins. Within months of vaccination, these people had developed some serious cancers. They were perfectly healthy before, Catanzaro explained, noting worse outcomes with repeated boosters. Catanzaro reports a staggering increase in transcription errors from a normal 2.5% to 60 to 75% in vaccinated individuals. That disrupts cellular function and drives rapid, widespread mutations. The real-world cases he's seeing underscores the crisis. 9 glioblastoma brain tumors in previously healthy patients within 12 months of vaccination, plus surges in bladder, breast, colon, and other cancers. Dismissing claims that vaccines don't alter DNA, Catanzaro points to mechanisms like reverse transcriptase that enables host genome integration. All of that is very highly technical, but all of that sounds very bad.
It's poison. Yeah, it's poison. There you go.
Yes.
It's poison. It's the claw shot. That's all you need to know.
No, exactly. And I know, I don't know if you know a few people, but I definitely know a few people in my life that have had very mysterious, cancerous, gross, that people were very surprised about after getting the shots as well. So it's, anecdotal, sure, but, we're seeing more and more in the data that the data is bearing out that these mRNA vaccines were poison, as you said, Andrew.
Yeah, it's all bad. So we want to close this episode with a staggering piece from the Telegraph in the UK. They would have never published this 3 years ago. I know this because 3 years ago, if you said this, you would have gotten in serious trouble, maybe arrested in the UK, certainly canceled and banned from social media here if you did it. So, quote, COVID vaccines saved far fewer lives than first thought, a major new analysis has concluded, with researchers criticizing aggressive mandates. Last year, the World Health Organization claimed jabs had prevented the deaths of 14.4 million people globally in the first year alone, with some estimates putting the figure closer to 20 million. I'll just right off the bat, that is total garbage. It's complete garbage that has been thoroughly disproven in the same way that they claim that lockdowns save lives, and then Johns Hopkins came out and showed actually the only thing that lockdowns did was maybe at the most reduce COVID deaths by 0.2%, which is basically nothing compared to the utter damage they did to people's lives. So don't believe those numbers. Those are crazy numbers, okay? However, new modeling by Stanford University and Italian researchers suggests that while the vaccines did save lives, questionable, the true figure was substantially more conservative and closer to 2.5 million people worldwide over the course of the pandemic. So even if that number is accurate, which I don't think it is, that's still 10 times less. That's a lot less than the WHO is saying. The team estimated that 9 of 10 prevented deaths were in the over 60s, with jabs saving just 299 people under 20 and 1,808 people between 20 and 30 globally. Okay? Globally. 299 people under 20. I can tell you we can come up with tens of thousands of people, athletes under 30, who've died because of the jabs. So these are ridiculous. Okay, overall, 5,400 people needed to be vaccinated to save one life. But in the under 30s, this figure rose to 100,000 jabs, the paper suggests. So completely unnecessary. Researchers criticized aggressive mandates and the zealotry to vaccinate everyone at all costs, adding that the findings had implications of how future vaccine rollouts were handled. Right, the state's going to do what they did again, and we need to push back. John, I don't know how we would pronounce this because it's capital I.
Ionitis.
John
Ionitis.
Ionitis. Because an A there too.
Yeah, it's Ionitis.
Yeah, Ionitis. A professor of medicine at Stanford University and the study's first author said, I think early estimates were based on many parameters having values that are incompatible with our current understanding. That's a very fancy way of saying dumb data and modeling. That's what he's saying. In principle, targeting the populations who would get the vast majority of the benefit and letting alone those with questionable risk benefit and cost benefit makes a lot of sense. Aggressive mandates and the zealotry to vaccinate everyone at all costs were probably a bad idea. Yeah, probably a bad idea, and we shouldn't have given to the old people anyways. That's the point. No one should have got them. We shouldn't have given the old people.
If only there was like a declaration by world-renowned doctors, something called like the Great Harrington or something like that.
Harrington. The Great Harrington Declaration.
I know.
One of those doctors actually was at Stanford.
Yes. Yeah. No, exactly. Doctors and many scientists, many true experts in this field, had said from the outset that this is the way to deal with this sort of thing. And they were pilloried as grandma killers and insane, evil, selfish monsters who just wanted to kill grandma. And that's the same rhetoric we're seeing spewed from the talking heads on CTV and CBC as it pertains
you want our province to burn to the ground? Then don't be so selfish and go for your height.
Literally, that's the thing that makes MAGA and convoy conservatism, that they're just selfish. They're selfish. No, because it turns out fighting for your neighbor's liberty isn't selfish. It's not selfish. And had more Canadians not been selfish and prized their personal comfort over fighting for their God-given freedoms, Canada would be a much better place right now. So that is, I think, the thread that's weaving its way through the episode, Andrew, is it's not we told you so, although we did. It's standing on principle, even in matters that seem rather trivial and rather small, is essential in fighting for freedoms and liberties in our country. And I've said it before, but not taking the king's delicacies, as Daniel and his friends showed us, is how you become the Daniel 6. Daniel 1 kind of principled convictions is what leads to Daniel 6 principled convictions, right? It's what leads to you being able to, at the height of persecution, saying, no, we're not going to go there. Because it turns out if you give in to these sorts of things, you become conditioned to give in to government overreach. And that's why it's important for us to raise the red flag and say, whoa, this is no good. You can't do this. We're not going to let you do this. And this is why principled stands, like we saw in the one video, of going out and hiking, pushing back against this draconian rule that we've seen so many times in our nation is so important. Andrew, last words.
Yeah, I want to read something that I wrote this on April 7th, 2020. Okay, so I posted this on I posted to Facebook April 7th, 2020. So this is, I mean, like we're just we're less than a month after 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And Ontario has issued its first state of emergency. Okay. So April 7th, 2020, I wrote this. So this is coming up on 6 years ago. I've been telling friends, co-workers, and family members this for weeks. Okay. So for weeks, as in all the way back to mid-March. My biggest concern with this pandemic and the panicked and frenzied response that has ensued is neither the effect the illness itself will have, nor the effect it will have on the economy. My biggest concern is the willing relinquishment of rights and the handing over of power to the government, power that they will not easily give up, and power that they most certainly will use in tyrannical fashion. That is as true today as it was almost 6 years ago. So This and
We did
the
tell you
last
so.
the last 5.5 years have been evidence of that. That when the state takes your liberties, they don't give them back. You have to scratch and claw and fight to give them back. So better not to give them up in the first place, because when they do take them, they will be tyrants. So the COVID play has set up the climate tyranny play. So the encouragement for you in light of that, and I'll spare you the comments and some of the things that people said to me, which was,
I'm sure it was totally reasonable and not at all unhinged.
I think it actually wasn't unhinged, but I think looking back, I think people should be ashamed of themselves, and I think they are. I think some of the things people said looking back, they realized, you know what, maybe we shouldn't have supported the lone parasailer being arrested by the Coast Guard in the middle of nowhere. Maybe that was a bad move. So the reason why I wrote that post it is the same point that we want to communicate today, which is the state. And I remember asking Joe Boot this at a pastor's colloquium in 2021. I remember going up to him and asking, I said, Dr. Boot, why do you think the state has a proclivity to subsume all the other spheres under it? Right? Like, you don't necessarily see the church or the family or media or academia. What
Doesn't
is it
have
about
the same level of hubris? Yeah.
Well, what is it about the state that the proclivity is that the state will subsume these other spheres under its jurisdiction? And he said it's probably because they're the only ones that have the sword. So because they have the ability to punish so severely, they're really the only ones that have the strength to do that. No one else has the teeth to bite so severely. So that's the fact of the matter. The state, its natural bent is toward more tyranny, not less. And it's toward more power, not less. So if that's the bent of the state, the encouragement to you is when they flex, you need to defy tyrants. You need to go for walks in the park. You need to, but $28,000? Well, first of all, there are organizations like the JCCF that exist to help you fight those ridiculous fines. Or in my case, it was the Democracy Fund, right? So it would have been easier for me to fill out a ArriveCan. But on principle, I'm like, I will not do it. So give me your $6,000 ticket. And when all was said and done, it cost me significantly less than that. And there were nothing on my record, nothing permanent. But I would not comply with that lawlessness. So the encouragement for you is do the same. Don't back down. If you're in the East Coast, go for a walk. Go for a walk.
And do it
with
without pangs of conscience.
Yep, and go enjoy the world that God has made for you. Don't comply. Don't bend to tyrants. Don't obey tyrants.
Don't set the woods on fire. Please don't do that.
Obviously don't do that. Yeah?
Yes, that's actually a bad thing to do.
If
We're
your
not advocating for that.
Yeah. If your actions cause some purple-haired wokey to light their hair on fire, then I'm all for it. Pour on the gasoline. Join in that. Okay? And by pour on the gasoline, I mean, tell them abortion is murder. That'll certainly help throw them into a tizzy. So my words from almost 6 years ago now, I mean them as much as I did, which my concern, my fear isn't that the forest fires are going to destroy the East Coast, nor is it that people walking in forests are going to set them ablaze. That's not my concern. My concern is when the state reaches for more power and more control and to take away more of your freedoms, they're not going to give them back, not without a fight, and they're going to use them against you in tyrannical fashion. So don't comply. You need to hold the state accountable. You need to, through your defiance, let them know that they're outside of their jurisdiction with a clean conscience, and trust that the Lord will take care of his people, even if petty tyrants come after them.
Yeah. We need to exhibit the same zeal for our jurisdiction as you see in like the bad cop shows. You know, like, oh, this is the forest ranger jurisdiction. Yeah. No, it's the FBI. You know, like how they fight. But it's actually an important principle. It's who is the ruler, who is the authority in these various areas, and we have to be able to exercise that and do it for the sake of love of God and love of neighbor. Andrew, I can't help but think this is the secularist paradise, right? Canada's on the forefront of the globalist new world order, right? Right? We were an example of where they wanted modern secular nations to go. And I think right now we just have to stop and take a sober look at the story that we're in. And it's clear to so many people, way more clear now than it was 6 years ago, to people in Canada, that Canada is an absolute disaster, right? So much so that 7 out of 10 people practically think Canada's broken. Now, 7 out of 10. It's hard to get that level of consensus in Canada. 7 out of 10 people think Canada's broken. But this is the progressive paradise. This is what we see.
And lest anyone think, oh, wow, 7 out of 10 people think Canada's broken. We're going to turn this thing around. Just remember, as long as they keep bringing in 700,000 immigrants each year and making sure that they are well funded at our dime, and they still encourage us to murder our babies, get married later, and have 1.7 children per family, it doesn't really matter how many Canadians say that Canada's broken. It's just a numbers game where they can just usher in their utopia simply by importing votes and killing our own people.
Yeah.
So that's another way that you push back. Get married young, have a bunch of kids, keep them out of state-funded education. That's the resistance. The resistance is marry young, have lots of babies, and don't send them to public school. That's the real resistance.
No,
go
exactly.
to church.
Yeah,
that's the resistance.
Exactly. I mean, absolutely. But I just again, I want to highlight where we're at. This is the progressive paradise that Canada is, where we let off criminals because we're worried about them not obtaining full legal Canadian citizenship. So unbelievable legal partiality. We're not punishing serious sexual and other violent crimes against persons and properties, but we are fining you for going for a walk in the woods.
Well, again, if you remember,
That's
it was
Canada.
When James Coates was arrested and put into prison for 37 days or something, 57 days, whatever. Edmonton, they were simultaneously releasing sex offenders because the prisons were overcrowded because of COVID. They couldn't be so close together. So a pastor who keeps his church open goes to jail, sex offender released.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that's the level of arbitrary rule that is definitionally tyrannical and anti-God. And this is it. This is the secularist paradise. This is the progressive paradise of Canada, where criminals go free and get lenient sentences, and people taking nature walks get hit with massive life-altering fines. It's only going to stop through reformation and revival, through some of the principles that you've given us, and for us standing on principle. For it's for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore. Stand firm, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. Till next time, everybody. God bless you.
Liberty Dispatch has been brought to you by SDG Media. If you want to stay in touch with us on all things Liberty Dispatch, join our email list, or support the show, head over to ldcanada.substack.com.